Clayton, welcome back.
Hey, Nick, thanks for having me, man. It's been a little bit of a minute. I almost think I forget how to do these now. It's about the results of your actions. And as I've taken the time to really let that settle in, I realized that perception is reality.
What do you regret, if anything? Or more specifically, what would you do differently reflecting back on those moments where things kind of got messy and got you in trouble? Yeah, what would you do differently? And maybe a way to answer that question is a year from now or 6 months from now, there'll be a new bachelor and they might call you up and say, "Do you have any advice for me?" What would be that advice that you would give to your predecessor who is going to find themselves in another challenging, difficult situation of managing feelings and relationships, all while trying to prioritize their own love story?
Yeah, I think I was giving this advice, and I think it still holds true after the show. I realized I shouldn't have made those assumptions. I regret the fact that I made assumptions and I thought that me and the women all saw it the same way as far as where we were at, and it wasn't the case. And with that, I should have been able to, yeah, ask more questions, see where the women were at before I made these really tough decisions.
How did you hear about it? And what were conversations that you two had with each other about how you guys were going to approach this mess? That's what I'm most curious about.
So, like, to be honest, the first thing I did was say, I didn't really read her message. She had sent me a message saying that she slept with Clayton the night before, and I was working. So I like briefly saw it, and I've actually had that happen in a relationship before. So I was like, dang, like, who's going to make this up? This is wild. But we are in a public relationship, and there are a lot of people that, might, I don't know, that just want to meddle and stuff. So I was like, okay, this is weird. My heart sunk though. I didn't realize it said New York because I just briefly looked at it, and I texted Clayton. I said, hey, like, I'm working, but if this is true, just tell me, and like, we'll figure this out privately.
You had to face the internal fear that it still could be true.
Yeah, Clayton is one of the most genuine, honest, upfront people, and like, we both say that we're not the type of people that cheat. Neither of us ever have, but we say, God forbid, if a weird alternative universe it did happen, like, we would be the type of people that tell on ourselves to our partner, because we just have that, we're just super honest, respect. Yeah. So yeah, I did initially get that feeling of like, oh my gosh, like, because I didn't really look at the message that hard. And Clayton was like, it absolutely didn't happen. FaceTime me immediately, literally in Arizona again. I had just FaceTimed him the night before. And he's like, yeah, she's saying that I was in New York last night. And I'm like, oh, okay. Like, and then it was immediately like, okay, there's just like this isn't even possible. But even if even if she was in New York, I think, or Arizona, I'm sure we would have figured it out. However, but we basically decided I trusted him. Let's approach this together. Let's not talk about it publicly. Yeah, let's not give her attention. Because at the time, we're like, she's obviously just doing this for clout. So we're like, let's just not even acknowledge it. But then people really did start to question Clayton.
Speaking of that collage you guys posted, have you guys publicly addressed the choking shot of which people quickly picked up on?
Yeah, that was I mean, I wish I could
Clayton's
say it.
blushing for anyone who's not
I
watching the
know.
YouTube.
It's because his grandma saw it, so it's a sensitive subject.
Grandma,
but-
Have you talked much about having body dysmorphia, Clayton?
I started to open up more about it. In fact, I had a really cool conversation. I was back with my friends in Missouri, and I was out one night, and there was a couple friends of friends that were there. I started just telling my buddy what I wanted to do and the platform I wanted to utilize it for good. And I had one of the guys came over to me and said, "Hey, I just heard you talking about it. And I wanted to sit closer to you because I couldn't hear like what all you were saying. But he goes, I wanted to at least tell you that I think it's so cool that you're talking about this." He's like, because I have body dysmorphia. And he opened up to me. And this is a guy that I didn't know that well. And he just said, I have body dysmorphia, and I wish more guys would talk about it because it is a struggle that I face. But hearing you talk about it, just makes me feel that I also share something and I'm not alone in this regard. And so I've had a few of those powerful conversations. In North Carolina, I went and talked to a guy that he's creating an app for college athletes, or just former athletes, for mental health resources. And he had lost 3 or 4 friends to suicide. So I'm starting to, like, for me, having these conversations and realizing that if we can get this message out of just having one more conversation, just talking about the issues that plague us and make it more normal. And
Yeah.
you're not less of a man if you talk about these things. So I'm trying to push it out as much as possible and share my experiences. I talked about body dysmorphia on the show for one of the dates that we went on briefly, but I think it's just a matter of continuing to talk about it, and I'm comfortable with that. I don't feel like I'm less of a man. I think you're more of a man if you can talk about these things, because I've looked at the research. Just as many men suffer with body dysmorphia as women, is what a few articles that I read said. So it's
Yeah, I
more
feel
common
like
than people seem to think.
it was it wasn't really discussed much when it was on the show. I mean, there's so much going on. It was kind of glossed over, but like you said, I mean, I think it's something we talk about a lot in women communities, but I don't think we address as much in male communities and with men. And being a former professional athlete, I think a lot of people assume that that's something you would never deal with.